Hello everyone, I am Laura Nelkin and welcome to clue number 6 of Open Minds Mystery Knit Along. Earlier this winter, I couldn't even imagine getting to this place. Time really flies when we're having fun with our open minds, right? So clue number 6, what's important for you to know about this video is this is a companion to the pattern. If you don't have the Open Minds pattern, there's a link to it below in the show notes. You can go ahead and check that out. I am very excited about clue number 6 because clue number 6 uses a technique that I like to think of as kind of a signature move that I like to do. I've used it in, I would say, a good 80% of my mystery knit-alongs. I have a whole line of side-to-side sweaters called the Novice Construction that uses the technique that I use in clue 6. So for those of you who have knit a fair number of my mystery knit-alongs and patterns, this technique is not going to be new to you, but I know that there are a bunch of you joining in for this mystery knit-along who haven't knit a lot of my designs, and you're going to be learning something new that might blow your mind a little bit, and it might open it up to some new possibilities of things that you want to knit. So I'm wearing a sweater called Pacificus. And Pacificus, if I show you on the side, you can see it has a side panel right here. And the side panel is zipping up the front and the back of the sweater by binding off stitches from the back and then binding off stitches from the front as that side panel is worked up. Same with Goldie over here. She is wearing Hot Flash, actually the first sweater that I designed using this technique. And you can see this line right here coming up her back. This back panel is connecting the left and right sides of the sweater, working straight up like this. So you have stitches coming in this direction, stitches cupping in this direction, and then this panel is worked up from the bottom and you're binding off stitches. So it's the exact same technique we are about to do in clue number 6 together. I want to dive right in, teach you a few things that I need you to know, but some of the things that happen in clue number 6, I've already taught you how to do in the clue number 4 video. So if you don't remember how to place beads or you need a refresher for that, you can jump back to the clue number 4 video. If you need to go over the bind off, which is also in the clue number 4 video, just jump over there. I'm not going to kind of repeat content because that gets boring for me and boring for you, and we want to keep our minds moving forward, right? So the first thing that we're going to do together is learning how to pick up and purl stitches. So I'm going to show you where on your open mind you're picking up stitches, and then we're going to do that together on my little mini shawl to get you going, and then I'll show you how to work that join together. All right, let's get going with those open minds. Okay, it's time to pick up stitches. You're going to be following your pattern as it is written, and you're going to be starting with the wrong side facing of clue 3. What I want to do quickly on this diagram that is on page 24 of your pattern is show you exactly where you are in your shawl. So we started with clue 1 and we worked in this direction, and then we worked clue 2, and then we worked clue 3, and then we worked clue 4, and then clue 5, and now on clue 6, we're filling in this section of the shawl by working rows back and forth, filling in that area with fabric. The moment that you do that, you can see the entire shawl take shape, which I think is really fun to kind of see how it's all coming together. But what we're going to be doing is picking up stitches along the side of clue 3, and then taking those live stitches from clue 1 that you had on a piece of scrap yarn and working across them, and then picking up stitches along the edge of clue 2. So you're going to be starting right down on this point of clue number 3 with the wrong side facing you. And you're going to be picking up and purling stitches and twisting them at the same time. And this is a point that all 3 of my test knitters were like, Show us, Laura. I'm not sure I understand that. And with them, what I do with my test knitters is I won't give them a video. I just keep describing with words to make sure that something can be done without a video. But since we're in video right now, that made absolutely no sense since we have the capability of showing you video. I'm going to show you exactly how to pick up and purl those stitches. So I've got my little mini shawl right here. And I'm going to come to the wrong side of clue number 3. And you are going to notice that I have a smaller needle right here. You can just grab any small needle that you have. And when you're picking up stitches, you're going to be picking them up and just putting them onto your needle. If you want to, you can pick them up from the front to the back, or you can pick them up from the back to the front. I'm just going to pick it up from the back to the front, and you'll see I'm picking up both legs of the slip stitch. And this is really easy to do as you go across because you're picking up both legs of the same color. If you remember, the first stitch on the wrong side rows on clues 2 and 3 were slipped. So you're just picking those stitches up and putting it onto the needle. And then you're gonna grab your working needle. And then the other thing that I want to tell you that I'm doing is I'm not working with my LY. You will be working with your leftover LY for this clue. I'm not working with my LY because it doesn't show up well under the camera. So I'm just using some coordinating, kind of contrasting fingering weight yarn, but you'll be using your LY. And now I've got those stitches picked up on the needle, and I'm gonna go in from the back to the front, wrap my yarn around, and purl it through. And I've picked up and purled 1 stitch. So you're gonna come in from the front, from the back to the front, and then work it through the front, which twists it. I think that that is much easier to do. And we're gonna continue along like that. I'm gonna do it a few more times for you so you can see it well. And you will be picking up 90 stitches like this. 90 stitches is basically 1 stitch in every 2 rows. So it's every slip stitch as you come along. And then you'll be working and purling that. And you're gonna get 90 stitches total. I'm going to have less than that because I have a smaller shawl than you guys. I'm working on a little mini shawl. So go ahead and do that along clue 3. And then when you finish that on clue 3, you're gonna take your stitches that are held, the 22 stitches from clue 1, put them onto a spare needle. You can use the same spare needle or whatever you want, purl across those, and then you're gonna pick up and purl stitches, twisting them down the side of clue 2. What I think is really important to tell you about this step is this pickup is actually going to get covered by slip stitches when we go to work the next step. So don't worry if you think it doesn't look beautiful or it could be a little bit prettier. We're gonna cover up this little bit. So just get those stitches on, pick them up, use this technique, watch that a few times if you wanna make sure that you understand it correctly. Remember, you're doing this with your LY, and come back and then let's look at the chart together and look at how this clue is constructed so you understand how to work the chart correctly. Okay, I want to quickly look at the final mind stitch chart together. This is the final chart. Remember, there's also written instructions if you're somebody who likes them more, but I still think you should look at the chart because the chart will help you understand what's happening with this wedge that is filling in the space between clues 2 and 3 on your shawl. So let's look down at the chart together and I think you'll easily be able to see what's happening. So right down here, you can see even starting on row 1, we have increase lines happening 1, or it's actually 2 stitches in from the edge. The stitch on each end of every row is the stitch that becomes the slip stitch that covers up those picked up stitches that you did at the beginning of this clue. And then you have a stitch that's worked plain, and then you have an increase. And that is true on every right side row of this clue. And what those increases are doing is creating the wedge shape that fills in that space. I already said that, I just said it again. So you're following along, but I think what's very interesting to look at is you already worked it in the setup rows, but we're gonna work those setup rows in a second and you'll see how this works. You're gonna slip the first stitch and you're gonna work across the chart. And when you get to the end, you're gonna be working something that you've never worked before, and that is a J2. If we look over at the chart key, a J2 has you slip one knitwise with yarn and back, knit two together, pass slip stitch over. J2 is for join two stitches. Those two stitches are two stitches from clue 3. So those are two stitches that you picked up along the edge of clue 3. Then when you go to work back on clue 2, you're going to be working back and working a J2 on a wrong side row, which has you purling two stitches together, and those two stitches are from clue 2, and then passing the slip stitch over them. So as you work up this chart, you're binding off stitches from clue 3 on your right side rows and clue 2 on your wrong side rows. The only other thing that is new on this chart is the J1, and that's a single join. So that instead of working a knit 2 together or a purl 2 together, you're working a knit 1 or a purl 1. So when you work through rows 1 through 6, you're binding off 5 stitches from clue 3 and 5 stitches from clue 2. And rows 7 through 42 bind off 30 stitches from each side. And if you counted up the J2s and J1s, you would get to 30 stitches right there. So you're working through rows 7 of 42 once, and you're repeating that red box only one time. You're just working across the chart. Then when you go to work rows 7 through 42 a second time, you'll be repeating that red box 3 times. And then when you go to work rows 7 through 28, you'll be repeating that red box 5 times. And that is because you're increasing on that outer edge, right? Creating that wedge shape, giving yourself more stitches, and that red box is creating those extra lace repeats as you build it out. I am so excited to see these come off your needles. This is really fun. This is my favorite kind of construction technique, and it is a blast to be working with it. Blast to be working on it with you on this clue. So now that I've showed you the chart, let's jump to our stitches and do this in real time so you really understand what all those words just were. All right, we're ready to work the setup rows, and let's work at least the first 6 rows of the chart together to really get into a flow so you understand how all of these joins do. What I want you to see on the setup row is the first thing the setup row has you do is slip 90 stitches purlwise without working them to the right hand needle. So when you've picked up all your stitches, you're all the way over here at the end of clue 2. But the setup row, you're actually starting right here at the join of clue 2 and clue 1. So you're just going to be slipping the stitches back over. You've cut your yarn after you've picked up all the stitches, and you'll be reattaching your yarn to work the setup row 1. But I just want you to see, I think it's really helpful, since we have the diagram, for you to look at it with me and understand exactly where you're going to start to work this clue. I know when I sent it to my tech editor the first time, she was like, wait, where are we slipping to? I was like, just somewhere in the middle of your mind. We're just moving some stitches over. have an open mind about it. So on my needles down here, I've already done my slipping. Remember that I have less stitches on my needles than you. So whereas you guys have about 22 stitches exactly for those center stitches of clue 1, I think I have 10 stitches. So the other thing to remember is I'm not working with my LY, I am working with some MS that I had lying around just to keep the contrast high. So I am knitting right now. I believe the pattern has you knit 21. I'm going to knit 9 stitches. And I'm just knitting, trying not to be too quiet. And I believe that that was my 9 stitches. And now when I get to that point, I'm ready to join my center panel, which is going to end up being increasing with my clue 3. So I'm going to slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back, and then I am going to knit 2 together, and then I am going to pass that slip stitch over. And what I've done right there is decreased 2 stitches off of clue 3. And now I am going to turn my work. And I'm turning my work so I'm on the wrong side of my work. And the first stitch, I am going to slip with my yarn in front. And then you're gonna knit 20. I'm gonna actually knit 8. And then I am going to bring my yarn to the front of my work. You can see I did that without thinking. I'm so used to doing this technique that my hands do it without even thinking. Bring the yarn to the front of your work, slip the next stitch purlwise, and your yarn's in front. And then I'm going to purl 2 together, and then I'm going to slip that stitch over, but I need to reach to the front of my work to go ahead and slip that over. And now what I've done right there is decrease 2 stitches from clue 2. So now I'm going to turn my work again, and I'm ready to work rows 1 through 6 of the final mind. And you'll be working them from the chart or written directions. We already looked at the chart and how it works. And what I want to do is work those first 6 rows with you. We'll see if it feels like it gets a little boring or not. I love knitting with you guys, so it should be all right. So I'm just following the chart as written. I'm slipping the first stitch purlwise with yarn and back. I'm knitting 1. I'm working a yarn over. And now I am knitting 6, it should be right here. And then I'm going to do a yarn over, and I'm going to do a knit 1. I'm going to slip 1 purlwise. Now these are my stitches from clue 3 right here. I am going to knit 2 together because I'm at that J2, pass that slip stitch over, and now I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to slip 1 purlwise with yarn in front, and then I am going to purl across to join on clue 2. Your little tip right here is when you reach that yarn over, you'll purl your yarn over, and then you'll purl 1 more stitch, and it's time to do the slip stitch. So those yarn overs can be really good indicators for you when you're getting to the end of the center and it's time to work the decrease off the other clue. So I've got my yarn in front, I'm gonna slip 1 purlwise, I'm gonna purl 2 together, and then I'm just gonna reach around, lift that up, and pull it over. And that's rows 1 and 2. Rows 3 and 4 are exactly the same. I'm just gonna knit and tell you a story. Those of you who've worked this kind of join before, I think you're gonna find the flow very quickly with it. Those of you where it's new for you, it's nice that it starts with less stitches and builds up with more stitches as you get comfortable. There I am to the end. I did the yarn over, the knit one. I'm going to slip one purlwise with yarn and back, knit two together, and knit one. And now I am going to turn my work. I am going to slip one purlwise with yarn in front, and now I'm purling across. Remember, I'm basically purling to one stitch past that yarn over, and then it's time to do the decrease. So you can kind of go on automatic. It'll happen sometimes. You might end up finding that you got all into purling and you end up like purling across clue 2, and you'll have to back up a little bit. But I'm going to anticipate that that could happen for you. Now I am going to get to that last stitch, slip one purlwise, and then I'm going to purl two together and pass that slip stitch over. Now I'm on row 5, and that is a lace row, and this is not new lace to you guys. This is the same lace that you've been working all along. What's different on rows 5 and 6 is that it is a single join at the end instead of a double. So I'm going to slip this stitch purlwise with yarn and back, knit one, yarn over, making that increase so that our wedge is increasing. I'm going to knit 4. I am going to knit 2 together 3 times. Oh, silly me, I'm just reading my chart and talking to you guys, completely forgetting that I have way less stitches on my needles. I got so into the zone there. So I'm going to skip the lace on my row 5. You're working lace on your row 5. So I just backed up. I love it when that happens. Now I'm just working across, you're working the lace. I am working to the yarn over and then making a yarn over, knitting one. Now I'm going to slip one purlwise, and I'm only going to knit one right there because I'm at the single join. I'm going to pass that slip stitch over, and now I'm going to turn my work, and I'm on row 6. And this row is actually a garter row. So I'm slipping the first stitch purlwise with yarn in front. I am purling one, and then I am knitting to one stitch before the join. And if you're placing beads, you will be placing beads on this row as you did before. You don't have to place beads. That is completely up to you. I am knitting. I will knit the yarn over, and here's a little trick here. Just going to knit the yarn over, and then this next stitch is purled, and now I will slip that stitch, purl 1, and pass the slip stitch over. And that's rows 1 to 6. But what I want to show you is, especially with this heavier weight yarn, you can really see it start to fill in between clue 2 and clue 3, coming off of clue 1 right there. What's going to happen now is you're going to continue on working the chart. Rows 7 through 42 bind off 30 stitches on each side. So what I highly suggest to you to do is grab a removable stitch marker, count 30 stitches down on clue 3, place a marker, do the same on clue 2, and then you'll know if anything goes off. What's really lovely about these double decreases and single decreases for doing the joins is there's a little bit of what I would call like a zhuzh factor. So let's say you're getting towards the end of row 42 and you don't have the right number of stitches you should have left. You can end up working an extra double decrease, or one of the double decreases you can just work a single decrease. As long as you're kind of marking off that 30 stitch repeat, it lets you kind of play around a little bit if you need to, if you end up working a double decrease when you should have worked a single one, or vice versa. So don't get too hung up in it. That'll come out in the blocking absolutely fine. Just go for it and trust yourself, trust your mind. I hope that this makes sense. I think you can really see how those slip stitches are covering up where you picked up stitches along the edge, so you don't have to worry about that so much. Wait until you block this and see how beautiful it is. I'm really excited to get to see all of your open minds finished. And that is a very good segue into talking about finishing. So let's do that next. Okay, you are ready to finish your open mind. When you got to the end of clue 6, you did a bind off. You did that elastic bind off that we did on clues 4 and 5. And if you need a refresher on how to do that bind off, that is in the clue 4 video. Let me just push my glasses back up. I got all excited. If you want to use beads, you can use beads on that bind off. You don't have to use beads on that bind off. Once you are done with your entire clue, it is time to weave in ends and block. Typically for me, I like to weave in my ends but not trim them until after I block my piece. So I'll sit down and I'll watch something on Netflix or Hulu or whatever, listen to a podcast. I'll weave in all my ends. It's a great time to call somebody and talk to them on the phone to get that task done. Otherwise your project could sit around for a little while. And then I'll take my finished piece and I will soak it in some warm water, not hot water and not cold water. If you have a little wool wash, you can throw that in with your project, just kind of move it around a little in the sink. Let it soak for a good 10 or 15 minutes to let all the fibers get really wet. And then take it out of the sink or tub or whatever you've put it in and squeeze it out in some old clean towels to just kind of get all the extra moisture out. And then you're gonna lay your open minds out flat. Keep in mind that your open mind is quite big. So if you don't have enough blocking boards, you can use some extra towels at the edge. You can use, if you have a guest bed, or maybe you can sleep on the floor. I'm just joking. Sleep on the couch one night and use your king size bed in your bedroom. It's a big one. Whatever you need to do to lay it out flat and really stretch it out. What I like to do with my open mind is you'll see that clue 1 along the top is rather straight. So you can kind of stretch that out. And then you'll see that those wings of clues, if we look right here at the diagram, you'll see that these wings right here, you can block them out flat on 4 and 5. And then you can kind of stretch out the points on clue 2 and 3 from that mitered square. You'll see that those might curve a little bit as you're allowing for the shaping that happens in this centerpiece. Blocking open minds is really fun. And then when you get to your borders down on the end of your wings, you can block those out into a point. People will start posting blocking photos. I don't want to spoil it by posting my blocking photo. I do have a few of mine blocking that I'll post at some point, but I really want you guys to get inspired by all the different ways you can block something. I remember the first time that I did a mystery knit along, I didn't give any clues as to how to block. The pattern just said weave in ends and block. And people blocked the same piece multiple different ways. And it was really cool to see how they looked based on blocking techniques. So I don't know if that'll happen quite as much with this project, but I like to leave that as part of the mystery. I just think it's kind of really getting you guys involved, and that's been part of the fun, is this community aspect of us all working on this project together. So after it's dried and blocked, then I trim my ends. So I've woven in my ends, but I don't trim them until after blocking. And that is because when you weave in your ends and you stretch it out, those ends kind of worm their way back a little bit as you're stretching out your knitting. So the last thing that I do is trim my ends. And then actually the last thing I do is take a picture, which I think sometimes can be the hardest part of knitting. I know for me, I can be done with things for a while and I end up with kind of a pile of things that need to be photographed. But that final photo to show everybody what you made is really fun for the rest of us to see. And it's fun for you to get to show your friends and family what you made with your awesome open mind, right? I'll stop saying open mind so much, it's getting obnoxious. Anyway, that's finishing. Those are the steps that you need to do for that. So I want to tell you just a few more things and we'll say goodbye. Thank you so much for trusting me on this adventure. It is a big deal to me that you had no idea what you were knitting and you joined in and trusted me and went and bought a bunch of yarn and cast on and did what a pattern told you to do for going on 6 or 7 weeks now. We've been working on this together. I've had such a blast seeing you all help each other and seeing the different ways that you collaborate and come up with ways to explain things to each other. I think it's really interesting. Sometimes I'll say something and it won't click, but somebody else will be like, well, try it like this. I put a stitch marker here, and all of a sudden that just opens things up. I've had a really good time watching you do all of that and working with you, and the color combos that you've come up with are just totally crazy and fun, and I'm inspired to make a few more of these over the next year. I feel like my friends have already seen mine, and more than one person are like, how do I get one of those in my life, right? Just looking at my notes. I bet some of you are wondering when we're gonna have another mystery knit along. I'm hoping to do another one in winter of 2022. I think that's my goal. I would like to not roll into spring, summer with a mystery knit along. I think it's fun to do one in a winter for me anyway. I know those of you in the southern hemisphere, it is summer then. If you want to keep up with what I'm doing and next knit-alongs coming down the pike, make sure you're signed up for my mailing list. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. I certainly release things every so often. I do have a knit-along planned. And what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, if you want to enter your open mind in a contest that we traditionally have at the end of a mystery knit-along in my Ravelry group, I'm going to set up a thread for you. I will announce an awesome prize there. And the deadline to post a photo of your finished open mind is July 7th. And on that day, that's the final day, you'll have through the end of the day, July 7th, to post a photo of your finished open mind. And I will announce what our next knit along is going to be. I mean, it's not a super big secret. Pretty much every summer I do something that's called a kit along, which is like a knit along for any one of my kits. And I'm pretty sure we're going to do something very similar. There'll be like prizes every week. We'll support each other. We'll help each other. It's a great time if you have things that are languishing on the needles for me to help you get them done. So that's kind of what we're looking towards as our next knit along. I always have something planned. Definitely love hanging out with you guys. So I'm always looking towards like, what's the next thing we're going to do together? Thank you so much. This has been an absolute joy for me, and I hope it has been for you too. Take care.